What's a story where the bad guys are actually completely 100% right, to the point where it's weird the story keeps calling them the bad guys? After being forced to watch this multiple times by the girlfriend, both Gilmore Girls, and nearly everyone they dated, especially Rory, how dare he not let me cheat on him or randomly string him along for years? All Iceman ever wanted was for Maverick to respect safety protocols instead of hot dogging all the time. The entire sequel is based on this premise. Iceman knows that the current commander is willing to let the pilots die to take out this target, even though the safety protocols would say to go higher, and Iceman, who cares about the lives of his fellow pilots, knows that Maverick is the only one who is capable of teaching these pilots to fly to save their own lives. He's still the hero, still doing the right thing by the pilots. Iceman in Top Gun: I used to work in naval aviation and he was totally right. Maverick was dangerous and unreliable. Edit. I really wasn't expecting this comment to blow up. I fully understand the meaning of bad guy, but in this instance I took it to mean anything from antagonist, villain, foil, or adversary, but this is Reddit and people are super pedantic and literal. My role was as a naval flight surgeon, so besides being my squadron's doctor, I flew in the backseat with them, sat on mishap investigation boards like the one depicted in the movie, and generally helped determine fitness for flight duty. Maverick wouldn't have lasted long with the antics he pulled and his personality IRL, but where is the fun and drama in that? Mr. Wilson: I was a tween when the movie came out. I was infuriated when Martha had to go make sandwiches when the steaks got paint all over them. F. Dennis. That weird episode of Friends where Phoebe is convinced her dead mother is reincarnated as a cat so she tries to steal it from its owners, and Ross is presented as the bad guy for pointing out how ridiculous this is. I read that this plot was actually suggested by one of the main writers who had recently lost their own parent. Nobody wanted to point out that it was stupid because they didn't want to seem insensitive, so they all just went with it. Todd and Margot in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. I can't imagine living next to someone so inconsiderate. He even caused literal property damage, yet they are still uptight jerks. Yeah, there is an entire class of villains in comedies, especially where the bad guys are simply people who don't want their days and even lives ruined by the wacky, fun-loving neighbors or workers. Every single Donald Duck cartoon. Dude usually just wants to chill out without being bothered, and there's always someone bothering him, and then he gets blamed for standing up for his own needs. The older I get, the more I empathize with Donald Duck. Disney understood that back in the day, too. His cartoons were actually more popular than Mickey's because he was more relatable. IIRC, when Disney was asked to make a cartoon explaining how income tax helped the war effort during World War II, they chose Donald, because he would be relatably frustrated with the whole process at first but learn how it worked. Donald is really interesting actually, because he was promoted to sergeant and was given discharge papers in the 80s as thanks for his service during World War II, due to the fact that he canonically joined the Army in 1941 in a Disney short. He proceeded to star in the most Disney wartime shorts and be featured on a high proportion of wartime badges Disney designed. Over 200 of them. I believe he's also an honorary member of both the Navy and Marine Corps thanks to his moral and propaganda contributions to the war effort. That's why Donald's song goes, "Who is never wrong, but always right? Who never dreams of starting a fight? Who gets stuck with all the bad luck? No one, but Donald Duck." His entire existence in the cartoon is for people to laugh at his bad luck. I have a saying around our Disney-obsessed household saying, "I'm getting Donald Duck today when everything goes wrong." Funnily enough, in Europe, and in Finland in particular, he's an extremely popular protagonist. Not the idealized sleuth and adventurer Mickey, but an everyman with plenty of shortcomings, but he perseveres by his indomitable spirit. Especially in Mickey's Twice Upon a Christmas. He just wanted a small break from the holidays to enjoy a cup of hot cocoa. That's the worst one. My son watches it all the time. If anything, Donald is rejecting the commercialism of Christmas in that one. Decriminalize drinking cocoa in your chair for the holidays. The ethics in that show are fucking bonkers, man. For those who don't know, everyone in the Inhuman Society gets exposed to gas which randomly mutates them. If the gas gives you sexy mutation, you get to stay in your home with your family, but if the gas gives you an ugly mutation, you get sent to the mines as a lifelong slave, and the good guys are the people who uphold this system. And the bad guy is the person who thinks that the system is wrong. What the actual fuck, man? How did that shit get greenlit? Never really called the bad guy, but Reese Witherspoon is definitely the bad guy in Sweet Home Alabama. Her New York fiancé is a super good guy and puts up with a crazy bee the whole movie. Most heist movies. Oh, he's doing it to afford medicine for his sick child. Okay, but he just killed 14 security guards, none of whom will be going home to their families. Now. Police Academy. They let a bunch of violent, unstable, dishonest deadbeats into the police force, and the chief of police was supposed to be okay with that. He was doing the public a favor by trying to weed out the worst ones. It's a different take, but Mahoney didn't even want to be there in the first place, but I think it was court-ordered or something. In fact, most of them were misfits and probably never ever should have worn a uniform. Any rom-com where the main character cheats on their partner with the new love interest that they end up with. Plus the setup that they do to make the audience dislike the current partner in order to make the cheating more palatable is often super contrived. I watched one recently where the only offense the current partner committed was to step briefly out of the main character's company Christmas party to put the finishing touches on closing a huge sales deal at his job. I guess it was supposed to be movie shorthand for him being more interested in his work than in her, but the writers were super lazy about it because his choice seemed pretty reasonable in the moment and he was an otherwise likable character. He totally got shafted. Was reading a Christmas Hallmark movies story from the other side, where two Wall Street people who were working hard staying up nights to save up money for future marriage and kids realized their partners went away to a small town and cheated on them with a charming local on a whim, on Christmas Day. So, they ditch their partners and for power couple, and buy a penthouse in New York and get their happy ending. That iceberg in Titanic is just minding its own business when it gets knocked on the head by the sex raft. This is a wild pull lol but high school musical. I'd be pissed if I worked my ass off for years to get the lead in a musical only for them to give it to someone else who didn't technically attend the auditions. Not to forget that Troy is the villain in HSM 2 for trying to sort out his future as a college basketball player rather than fucking about. This. Like, okay, he was starting to get a bit snobbish about all these things he was getting, but I mean, his friends were expecting him to reject it all just because, hey, this was meant to be the summer of our lives, dude. They couldn't find a middle ground. Troy had to choose one or the other. And then in HSM 3 everyone was doing the same thing anyways, worrying about their future. In High School Musical 2 they were all such brats about having to actually work at the job they got. And not getting to participate in an event at the country club because they had to work that night. They're not members there, they're staff. Plus the guy was totally right to be mad at Gabriella for leaving a lifeguard shift early unless there was a replacement who took over. Haha, yeah, I was an adult when I saw it. There's a scene where they're first learning the BL job, and the movie is acting like the boss is a unreasonable hard ass. But all he's saying is things like they have to be on time, wear the uniform and put their phones away. That guy in B movie. Girlfriend leaves him for a fucking B, said B proceeds to gaslight him into thinking he's crazy anyway. That movie sure was weird. Leaves him to fuck a B. Just to be clear, edit. Some of y'all are monster fuckers and honestly, power to you. He's just a little B. And he happens to be the nicest B I've met in a long time. Long time. What are you talking about? Are there other bugs in your life? The best line in the movie. What about Bob? The therapist was 100% correct to set boundaries with his client. Obviously it went off the rails, but it was so shitty for his family to side with Bill Murray's character over Richard Dreyfuss' character. Hades in mythology. Most of the time seen as the bad guy because he rules over the underworld, but he was sent there and he's just doing his job, maintain the souls inside, deliver punish when needed, etc. And Zeus is a horrible guy. Hades is one of the most mild gods in there. When Hades came to realize how messed up the world was now that he had accidentally caused winter to be a thing, he used his powers to safeguard all the seeds of the world beneath the earth during that season so that they would be ready to bloom when his wife returned to her mother. Name one other Greek god that ever admitted to making a mistake, and worked to correct it, for the sake of humans. Answer by you invaders from a similar thread some years ago. Megatron. The Decepticons were formed due to political corruption and a completely broken caste system. Megatron and the original Decepticons, Shockwave and Soundwave, were essentially born into the lowest caste on Cybertron, the field workers miners. They were born into conditions where their only way to stay alive and not be murdered in the middle of the night was to fight in the gladiator pits, where it was kill or be killed. The rest of the Cybertronians, Transformers, were split into a middle caste and the rich caste. The middle caste were the basic workers, light construction workers, archivers, other low-quality, tedious lives that they had no way out of. The rich caste controlled the entire government on Cybertron. These were the Primes. They share the title with Optimus Prime, but he was not one of them. They kept the lower classes underfoot with no way of advancing their civilization whatsoever. The middle class was well off, for the most part, but the low caste that Megatron was in was disregarded completely, treated like trash. So then this gladiator named Megatron starts inspiring all those lower caste workers and telling them that they don't have to live this way. Megatron is the first person who gains traction, and with the help of an archiver in the middle caste named Optimus, not yet a prime, begins to spread his ideas of freedom and being able to choose your life and what to do. At this point, the Decepticons are becoming a major threat to the higher caste. Rogue terrorist Decepticons begin performing terrorist attacks on various parts of Cybertron, even things like amusement parks, because yes, Transformers had those, and Megatron realizes just how much power that he has. Megatron and Optimus are given a hearing below the High Council to discuss fixing their society, because at this point Megatron and Optimus are the head of the mostly peaceful revolution. The Council does not think that Megatron has had any desire to cause destruction, just that his followers were becoming out of control. It was becoming a major issue, so it had to be addressed. At this hearing, the High Council of Primes addresses the clerk named Optimus for his efforts in trying to improve their society, and offer him the rank of Prime. He accepts, realizing that they may be able to fix their society without a full revolution. Megatron becomes enraged. His closest friend betrays him to join the very system he hated, and he absolutely loses it there. He signals his followers, who were among the audience in the chamber. At this point the uprising had been spreading throughout the whole planet to bring down the building. Megatron, who had gone nearly power mad, swears to kill Optimus for betraying their ideals and friendship. The building collapses, killing most of the Primes. Optimus and a few others escape. Optimus Prime becomes the leader of the reforming society, meanwhile the Decepticons gain more and more power. Thus begins the power struggle between those who want to peacefully reform Autobots, and those who want to scrap the entire system, killing anyone who opposes Decepticons. The conflict continues until Cybertron is finally bled dry and they must leave. The devastated remainder of their society, the Autobots, flee from the dying planet, but Megatron gives chase. They eventually wind up on Earth. Megatron was never evil. He felt rage because of the injustice of watching his kin die in the gladiator pits, and his closest friend betraying everything they had worked for and all of their ideals. He was eventually driven mad by power, brainwashing his loyal followers who believed what they were doing was right the whole time. Yes, Transformers has very deep lore. A shame that Bay doesn't try to include this rich lore and history that the series has. Also, this is what happens before G1, the 80s cartoon, if you're wondering. Mrs. Doubtfire because Pierce Brosnan was really nice and was a lonely middle-aged man who wanted a family, but Mrs. Doubtfire was so mean to him and even tried to kill him with pepper knowing he was allergic. Katherine Heigl's character in Knocked Up. When I watched it as a teenager I thought she was a frigid bitch who needed to lighten up and let Seth Rogen's character have fun. Now, as an adult in my 30s I'm like wow, that dude did not have his shit together. I get why she was stressed out. Edit. Please stop with the AKSHUALLY comments. I don't care.